You're listening to episode 106, Elizabeth's Story, A Son with PANDAS. Good morning, my friends. I am so happy that you're here today. I guess I said good morning, but it could be afternoon or evening, whenever you're listening. I'm glad that you're here. And I'm especially glad because we are going to be talking today about PANDAS. And if you've never heard of that before, don't worry, you're not alone. Elizabeth had not heard of it either when her son was diagnosed with it. And it is actually a diagnosis that is questionable, which means some doctors believe it and some doctors don't, which make having a child with a diagnosed issue that some people believe in and some don't is incredibly hard to navigate, to say the least. So PANDAS is an autoimmune disease that's closely related to infections. So you're going to hear Elizabeth talk about how her son's ear infections led to PANDAS. And she brings up such a good point that when we look at kids who have colds or cancer or, appendicitis, we don't judge them as a society. But when your child has neuropsychiatric symptoms, society tends to look down on you and not totally trust you and not believe you, even though the experience that you're having is incredibly real. There are misconceptions that his neuropsychiatric symptoms were because of bad parenting, violence in the home, that he was just a bad child or poor role models, that they didn't discipline enough. So there's a lot to carry on Elizabeth's shoulders as a parent of a child with this autoimmune or maybe not autoimmune issue. So I'm so glad that you're here today, and please listen to her story here. Before we jump into the episode, I wanted to let you guys know that if you are a parent, a child life specialist, or professional working with children, you're going to want the hospital or physician's office or urgent care that you take your kids to have the Child Life On-Call app. It is an evidence-based tool designed to empower children and families during medical experiences. And 100% of the child life specialists who have used this app believe that it can help with expanding child life's reach beyond the bedside. And 100% of child life specialists believe it helps parents feel more empowered in their child's care. Learn how to get the Child Life On-Call app for your facility or doctor's office by going to childlifeoncall.com/partners. If you want to just go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and your family and where you guys live, and just let us get to know you a little bit.
Sure. My name is Elizabeth Harris, and we live in Franklin, Tennessee. We moved down here from Kentucky about 25 years ago to actually open a second location of a spa that we had started in Paducah. So we ended up in Cool Springs, got into the spa industry. I had two children at the time, one 2-year-old and one 8-year-old. And then a few years later, we ended up adopting two more. Life was great. The spa had taken off. We moved, built out a new spa, added a salon, at which point my brother-in-law came to help us. He was actually a hairstylist and seemed to be doing pretty well, so we brought him on board. So it became quite the family affair. Our two new adopted children, worked out. I mean, they were working out great, blending with the family. I mean, they were wonderful children, and so life was really, really good.
I have a special place in my heart for Franklin because one of my very dear friends and fellow child life specialists is from Franklin, and she just raves about that small town. She's like, this is what life's all about. The people here, it's such a good place to live. Do you feel the same way?
I mean, I did. It was phenomenal. It's beautiful. There's hills. The schools were great. The kids did well. My husband at the time, found employment, and the clients everything was just really, really going well. And, as a biology and chemistry major in college, and then I had gone on to get the master's in sports medicine, I was going to do the med school route, but ended up physical therapy, cardiac rehab type situation in a gym, and just truly enjoyed the business part of growing an organization. And I had just gotten into business that way, but I was still very science minded. And so, when we added hair and the different treatments, I really got into the science of it. And we were doing a lot of body contouring and added some new services. And I just realized there really wasn't a great cellulite reduction device on the market for all types of cellulite. So I developed one. It took me several years, and I was in the middle of launching that. It's very well received. It did a skincare line. When my son got very sick with a very bizarre illness, a very bizarre syndrome, one I'd never seen before. And the thing is because I'd just been in the spa my whole life and raising kids, I really had never been to, I don't think we'd ever gone to the emergency room other than, I think, a broken arm one time. We went to the pediatrician, but there was nothing extraordinary about my knowledge when it comes to hospitals or doctors or medical issues, because we just really didn't have any. And so it was about 2010, and he was rolling around on the kitchen floor, just grabbing his stomach, saying his stomach hurt. He was just barely 11 at the time. And I thought, this is really unusual. And so we took him to the pediatrician, and he was diagnosed with strep. And I thought, strep throat, and he's grabbing his stomach. So they put him on amoxicillin, which they usually do, and then sent him home. And he started to get better. Now, when he was really, really young, he did have a lot of struggles with ear infections and a couple bouts of pneumonia, but he seemed to have grown out of that. And so we hadn't been involved with any medical stuff in quite some time. So we were just thinking, okay, he's going to recover from this strep infection and everything will go back to normal. Well, it was about 2 weeks later when all of a sudden I was sitting at the table working, and I'll never forget because I looked up and he's just looking differently, and he has this flannel shirt and he's unbuttoning it and buttoning it again and unbuttoning it again and back and forth. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, I can't get it to, button right. And I'm like, it's buttoned, Yeah. And I'm like, okay. Then he starts to walk back and forth across the transition strip, like with his, I now know, left foot. That became his thing, left foot. I had to go over, and then it wasn't right, and had to come back. Of course, I didn't know anything about OCD at the time or anything like that. So I was a little concerned. I called the pediatrician, and he said, oh, it's not, nothing to be worried about. That sounds fairly normal. So I tried to put it to the side. But the next day, he got up, and he started making this huge tent, like dragging every chair, everything that would hold any kind of sheet or blanket, every sheet and blanket off of all the beds, making this monstrous tent. And it was just like, it went on for like 4 or 5 hours. And I was like, but he was more like obsessed with it. Now I know. But at the time I just thought, okay, things are getting a little weirder here. And so I called the doctor's office again. I said, oh, he's probably just playing hide and go seek. And I was like, okay, what, So by day 3, I go in there, and he is like crouched behind the chair in the corner and thinking bugs are crawling on him, looking terrified. Pupils are huge, thinking that people are staring at him through the window. And it was Christmas time, so he crawled over behind the Christmas tree. Anyway, I finally called a colleague over, and I was like, okay, the doctor said that, like, basically I'm crazy and imagining things, but can you come over here and tell me what you think? He came right over, and he's like, there is something seriously wrong with your son. I was like, okay, thank you. So I called back again, and this time the doctor was different. He was a different doctor on call, and he said, this sounds like an acute onset of PANDAS, which is pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorders associated with streptococcal infections. Well, I was like, what? I Googled it real quick. There's really nothing available at the time. And so he said, take him to Vanderbilt emergency room. So, okay. Well, I'm thinking naturally, like I think most parents would think, okay, somebody knows what this is. It's a thing. He's telling me where to go. They're going to know what to do. That was the furthest thing from the truth I could have ever thought.
Oh, gosh, that is so overwhelming, especially like that sudden change that you're seeing. And when you have someone telling you it's normal and you know in your gut that it's not, it feels very isolating. Like, who's going to be on my team?
It's so isolating. And, we came from a small town, Paducah, and I'd always had the same accountant and the same pediatrician growing up my whole life. And we've gotten a pediatrician here, it's the same. So it's just like you have your people and you trust them.
Yeah.
And, so we get to the hospital and barrage of doctors coming in. Of course, when we signed in, I'm like, I think my son has PANDAS, not knowing it was so controversial at the time. So I sit in the waiting room. We get back there, and so many different teams coming in, and you don't really know who's from what team or what they're trying to do or what their agenda is when they come in. You're just answering the questions honestly, but a single team gets like the whole story. They come in, they just ask you questions from their angle. And that's the one thing that I really wish I had known at the time. Because I ended up giving a lot of good data to the psychiatrist, which probably, and they would just, it's OCD. Has he always had OCD? And I'm like, well, he's been a perfectionist. I didn't know that would trigger. He's always had OCD, and now this is an exacerbation. I'm like, no, that's not what I said.
Right.
So it's like, that was really stressful. Neurology came in, and they're like, okay, he's still positive for strep. Still had the strep. Unbeknownst to me at the time, he also had pneumonia. This would a few years later play out to be a very important fact, but nobody said he had pneumonia. I didn't know he had pneumonia.
Right.
And so they go on about what they're doing, and they admit him. And so we're there for about 3 days. We do a spinal tap, which is extremely hard on him. It was very painful.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, they say we're going to do some more IV antibiotics. I mean, now I'm really concerned because for some reason I remember the story of rheumatic fever and how strep, attacks the heart tissue because it's confused antibodies. And then forever, if you get strep, and these people are like, have to be on prophylactic antibiotics forever. And so I'm thinking, okay, this is the same thing, but it's the brain. Because it's an autoimmune disease of the brain. And so we got his strep titers back. They were about 1,700. And he seems to be getting better, though, with the antibiotics. The spinal tap comes back normal. Everything else is normal. And so day 3, they come in and they're like, okay, we're going to discharge you guys today. And I'm like, head spinning around. What?
Yeah.
Hold up. Because first and foremost, I, by this point in my life, I'm a business person,
Right.
And I've had some issues myself, but they hadn't come to the forefront quite yet. So I hadn't navigated anything medically. I'm just like, okay, wait, let me see the chart. I want to see the chart. He's like, well, you can't really see it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to see it.
Yeah.
I opened it up and it said psychosis NOS resolved. And I'm like, okay, how did we resolve it? Well, I mean, and he's like, well, we don't really know. And I'm like, well, clearly if he still had strep, you gave him the antibiotics, we resolved it like that. Well, we don't really know. And I thought, this is crazy. And ever since then, it was 4 years of just hell, and it started that day when they didn't know. So they released us and they said, you're going to go to cognitive behavioral therapy and we're going to put him on Zoloft. And again, my head spun around. What?
Yeah, right.
So it was just like, okay, cognitive behavioral therapy is talk therapy. And at that point in time, I was like, so we're sending him to talk therapy for a strep infection. And we're putting him on an antipsychotic for a strep infection. And it just, are we not going to do anything to prevent future strep? Are we not going to no, absolutely not. No antibiotics. They're dangerous, but you can have this Zoloft.
Right.
I'm like,
yeah.
And I'm just like, I can't even believe this.
It seems like this, just like from my own hospital experience, it just seems like the perfect time to have one of those family meetings where you have all of the specialties there with you. You're able to sit down and answer questions so that you can digest what's going on. And when we miss that piece of including the family in the care plan, there's no way that from your prior experience that you'd be able to understand what's happening. There's just no way.
Yeah, there is absolutely no way. And I said, where's the round table? Where's the meeting? Like, where's the board
Yeah.
meeting that's supposed to happen before we all leave here? And where's my,
Yeah.
notes? But I mean, I went ahead and I just took the follow-up instructions, went back to the pediatrician. Now, here's the thing that I didn't know to do at the time, and I just really think it's so important. I never asked him what his position was on PANDAS. Did he believe it? Did he understand it? Because I just trusted that he would have told me, hey, you know what? I'm not really sold on the fact that this is a real thing. Maybe we need to find you somebody else that can help you.
Wow.
But we went on like he did believe in it. And he knew what it was because he said you can bring him in anytime with no appointment for a strep test. But at the time, I didn't realize they're quick strep tests, and strep can hide anywhere.
Yeah.
So I would come to learn that, we can only trust blood testing, and it's typically not even going to be in his throat, and he will never have symptoms of a sore throat again. And so we went on that path. We started the talk therapy, started the Zoloft, made him a zombie. He was already on ADHD medications from the third grade. This is about the fifth or sixth grade. So now we're adding Zoloft and therapy. Well, something happened that day when that acute onset took place, and he never really went back to baseline. He just was fidgety and anxious and, his OCD. And so we had this therapist trying to teach us how to tame the OCD monster. And after about a year of this, it happens again the next fall, November. And this time he's just like hearing songs and his pupils are huge. His stomach's hurting again. This time I'm like, okay, this could be strep. Remember, it's not a throat. He ends up like this time really getting physically ill, but less so than the year before. But this time he has more psychiatric symptoms. And so he becomes aggressive, a little more aggressive with this round. And so I called the therapist and I'm like, we're not coming in there. I need you to come here and see this. So she came to the house and she said, okay, he needs more medical rule outs before I'll even continue therapy.
Right.
So we're fired by the therapist. I go back to the pediatrician and I'm like, hey, this is what she said. We need more testing. There's a new test that's come out. Can we do that? No. And so no antibiotics. And so, then I took him in for a case of roseola. And I'm like, he's in seventh grade. So these weird things are happening. And he never, and I'm like, roseola?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we just leave this child completely untreated. I'm like, can we pay for, I even called around to other pediatricians in the area. Nobody really knows about it. So this thing is escalating, becoming a monster because there's no medical treatment at all for 3 years. In the meantime, I'm also having symptoms of like numbness in my hands and hair falling out, and I'm losing weight. And, people were like convinced that it was the stress. I wasn't able to work as much. I wasn't traveling as much because I was trying to take care of him. So I could talk myself into the fact that it was stress, but those were escalating symptoms as well. And so we were just a mess.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
A mess.
And I can't even imagine the stress that you're under, the exhaustion, and like just keeping track of symptoms and doctor's appointments and researching and trying to find back end ways to do things. It's like, I'm sure your mind just never rested.
It never rested. And it seemed like it was just going faster and faster and faster, the more that needed to be done, and with, no help, and there wasn't really much online about it. Now there seems to be quite a bit more online. But when he was in the 8th grade, I said, I listened to the pediatrician, and I look back, I should not have ever listened to him. And he was like, you just need to be basically a better parent.
Oh my God.
And I was like, okay. And so I quit consulting. I quit traveling. I put a GM in charge of the spa, and I stayed home with the kids for a whole year, his 8th grade year. And I implemented total transformation, which is like this very rigid, like rewards, game night. I mean, all the things that you probably normally do as a parent, but it was all documented.
Yeah.
And so, but it didn't matter. It was up and down. These things would come and go, these flare ups. And he would end up with like 6 bus referrals in 3 days. And I was like, how does one child back and forth to school 27 times?
Oh my goodness.
The end of his 8th grade year, I'm like, okay, this is not working. We had a housekeeper at the time. She came in and she worked with him some on Spanish. She left, she called, she goes, I've got to tell you, I've been diagnosed with strep throat. And I just thought, oh my gosh.
Oh no.
I was just praying, okay, maybe he didn't get it. Maybe he didn't get it. But it seems like he's a strep magnet. And so it's in 24 hours, I get a call from the school nurse. He's turned green. He's throwing up. I go to pick him up. I get him home. Next level of oppositional defiance disorder. Didn't know that word either, except for that total transformation program. I was like, how does it? And I mean, overnight. No, I'm not. We're not. I mean, he never told me no. And I was just floored, and he was rolling around on the floor. At the time, I didn't know that was neurological. And so the school was threatening to call Juvenile because it's unruly. I found a test. Molecular labs had come out with a test. I called the pediatrician back, and I'm like, hey, listen, you know what? There is now a test for this thing. Can you order the test? He sends me a letter back saying, not only am I not going to order you the test, you're fired.
Oh my gosh. What?
And because I hadn't followed any of his medical advice. I'm like, you haven't given any medical advice. And what I came to find out was that because I hadn't gone to the therapist they put in notes from Vanderbilt, they thought I hadn't taken him to one. When in fact, that therapist was 6 months out. And so I found a private one that I didn't know the electronic records, not, all need to be connected or they can't follow you. So I had been taking him, and I got him in much sooner than I would have if I'd gone that route. And he'd already had like 50-something sessions.
Oh, Elizabeth.
So I went and got a printout of all the records. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. You can only come in here if it's like an emergency for the next 30 days. And I thought, this kid is a wreck.
Oh my gosh.
We'll be right back. In the past, I've been really reliant on coffee and energy drinks to help me focus, but I've been drinking Magic Mind. Y'all have heard me talk about it before, and it's made a huge difference in my energy level and ability to focus. The matcha, adaptogens, and nootropics help fight procrastination, brain fog, and fatigue, and I don't know any healthcare workers or parents that don't have that in their life right now. After just a few days of adding Magic Mind to my morning routine, I noticed I needed much less caffeine. Magic Mind truly values the well-being of healthcare workers and parents, and that is why they are giving us 20% off to all of our Child Life On-Call listeners. So go to magicmind.co/childlife and use code CHILDLIFE for 20% off.
If you are looking for a way to make a child in your life smile, then you have to go to smilemakers.com and go through all of the must-have toys, stickers, and prizes for kids. You'll find everything you need to make the hospital, waiting room, or even your own living room more fun with games, crafts, and prizes for every occasion. I also have very good news for you because when you go to smilemakers.com and type in OnCall20, you will get 20% off with no minimum order required. So stock up on bundles made specifically for hospital procedures and therapeutic play, and make these already very affordable items more affordable with OnCall20. That's smilemakers.com and OnCall20 for 20% off your entire order. If you can think back on some of the things that helped you, like, get yourself feeling like yourself, which I don't think you probably had a lot of time to do, but do you have any things that really worked for you? Were you able to, like, get away and have your husband watch him for a little bit? Like when he was at school, were you able to take time for yourself? Were you able to do any of that?
No, because I'm just going to be honest.
Very simple.
My husband and I going through, we divorced. He had also been getting some symptoms, but I didn't know at the time they were symptoms. I thought he was simply being lazy and not helping, and I was carrying the load of everything. I was beating up. I thought it was the stress of the divorce, and I just thought, the only thing I've got to do is get this child a test. So I know, are you I don't know, some kind of genetic thing? I don't know what was going on. But I was I just got to have some evidence here. And so the psychiatrist agreed to order the test. Well, by this time, we're involved with juvenile court. I mean, this all happens within 3 weeks of that strep infection, that I just mentioned.
Right.
And so we're involved with juvenile court. The schools filed one against him. I had to sign something because I was told that if we get involved with them, they have a lot of resources. I'm told that the juvenile courts are like a source of help, and there's doctors. And I'm thinking automatically a judge could write an order for the test. That's just the way my brain worked. Or could force some doctor to write this order, and we could find out what he has. That's not what happened at all. So we get tangled up with this horrible court system here. And now we've got this laundry list of rules and more therapy for me. And I'm like, the only thing that's going to help me right now is figuring out what's wrong with him so we can stop this train that's about to wreck.
Right. Oh.
But so he starts in and out of the juvenile detention center. I didn't know it was a jail for kids. You think it's like a day room and like there's like a camp or something. I came to find out they're putting these kids in cells, locking doors. There's no medical treatment. There's no nothing. It's just a first step to get them into a behavioral facility, which I was like, okay, that can't happen. So that's when I turned it up to high gear. I was like, okay, he's in really bad shape. So I had to get him in. And by this time, now he's got the positive PANDAS diagnosis. I call back, I don't know, maybe it's probably to the doctor's office, and I'm like, okay, he's positive for PANDAS, so what do you think now? And thankfully, sometimes you see like a little, I don't know, breadcrumb.
Right.
God probably throws you just to keep you going.
Yeah.
The nurse says, oh my gosh, like it hits her. 3 years of this child has needed medical treatment. We've not. So she says, come in. I'm going to get you with the other doctor. And he does treat PANDAS. I'm like, what? There's a doctor in the office that knows about this? And so she gets me in. He reads it. I'll never forget it. He crosses out behavioral issues and re-diagnosed him with PANDAS and put him on Keflex. I mean, I think that was like one of the worst and best days of my life.
Yeah. You're like, it could have been this easy 3 years ago.
It could have been, and we wouldn't be to this point, and he knew to test him by blood. And, and that's what I just want to point out is it's like if I could go back in time, I would have shocked every pediatrician in the country to find someone that was open-minded to just, work with us. But I didn't know that he didn't believe in it. And it's really hard to know what people's agendas are and what their goals are and what studies they've been a part of and what they're like an assistant professor to. It's a lot to navigate. So,
well,
unfortunately,
your story now and the way that you're sharing it is 1,000% going to help somebody else who now can find the confidence to shop for another pediatrician and ask those questions because you're sharing this. So thank you so much.
Oh, I really pray that that's the case. And I just feel like I've got to tell the story as many times as I can because, this could have been so easily avoided. Maybe not when I get to the answer, but
sure.
So we go to at this point, they're like, okay, he's way too advanced. He's not had any medical treatment. We don't know what's going on in there. All those viruses and everything has not been having any treatment because now he has nothing but psychiatric symptoms. There are no physical symptoms of anything. So now it's like a virus, he flares, but that might look like, rage or insomnia or frustration or labile emotions. I mean, I became like DSMV expert because I'm like, not only now does he have regular OCD, he is hoarding and he's doing all these subsets of OCD, like overnight. And I'm like, what is this? What is this? And I've got to look it up. I'm like, oh, that one's horrible. And it's almost like I started seeing, like, okay, so, if you get a cold or a flu, you get a fever, a sore throat, cough. No, he gets this, and this, but it's all psych. But if it was a different pathogen, it would present differently. So I would take him to a therapist or I would take him anywhere and would diagnose him with this. Over like this year period, at the end, he's got like 27 different diagnoses. It's like, okay, this is not even possible. And even this PANDAS thing isn't making any sense to me anymore because it doesn't look like it's just group A strep.
Right.
It's everything. So, of course, we change his diet, eliminate all the red foods, do all that. And I'm like, that made about as much difference as my total transformation.
Right.
I mean, the compulsions kicked in, and he gets a compulsion to drive cars. Well, he's driving car. I mean, it's just something you probably wouldn't believe until you saw it for yourself. So we have to get him in with Dr. Latimer, who is a pediatric neurologist, a PANDAS specialist up in Washington, D.C., but we can't get in for 6 months. He's going to need IVIG. So we finally make it to that day. I don't know how. We make it up there alive. He eloped from the hotel room now a few times on the way, and the judge is like watching me like a hawk, thinking I'm a bad mom and can't keep control of my own child. He's got an ankle monitor on, but he manages somehow to undo that. And he's so young, never been exposed to any of this. And I thought, there's a part of his brain he's got availability, and it's available that it shouldn't be. And I was like, this is in his brain, and it's not just, the front. So we get up there, we do the IVIG. It's $18,000 because insurance isn't covering this treatment for PANDAS yet. And as we leave the office, she says to me, he definitely has PANDAS, all of his records. Definitely has PANDAS. Might have PANS, which is Pediatric Autoimmune Neuropsychiatric syndrome. So my heart and stomach just fell to my feet. And I thought, oh my gosh, how can this be possible that every single thing in his life, anything, will cause him to act crazy? But I mean, I use that word like very respectfully because it was him. And he was great in between flares, but he would just go to places you couldn't even imagine. So she says to me to leave the office, I will just tell you that he's going to get worse before he gets better. What? My head spins around again. And I'm like, he can't get any worse. He's on probation from the juvenile kangaroo court. He's got ankle monitor on. She keeps putting him in solitary confinement. She hates me. She thinks that I'm not doing my job to control him. What do you mean? What does getting worse mean? And she said, it's going to get worse. It's going to take about 6 weeks, and the symptoms are going to unwind in the order that you saw them appear. And I'm like, what? So we get home that night, drive 17 hours, drive all night, and sure enough, he wouldn't go to sleep. He was up all night pacing. Of course, they had to give him steroids. Long story short, I'd been up for 36 hours straight again. I had a friend come in to help me so I could take a nap. And I guess she fell asleep because somehow he got the car keys and totaled my car. And there he was back in the detention center. I mean, and it's just like he had no executive functioning. I mean, he wasn't even thinking, I shouldn't do this. I can't do this. Like that's nowhere in his anything. It's like this animalistic almost, like I've got to do that. And so take him back to the detention center, and this time they locked him up and they wouldn't let him out. She kept him for close to 5 weeks in solitary confinement. Of course, the whole time I'm like, and he's getting PTSD. You've got him in a 5x7 cell. And then she cut off contact with us because I was just so angry at this time, and I was like, I'm definitely going to do something about this. So she tried to take custody away. Anyway, had to get a lawyer, had to learn the court system a little bit just to keep custody. Once I got him back, of course, I don't want to take custody of the other 3 because I got 2 of them from the state. That's a little hard for them.
Yeah.
So get him back, and I'm thinking, okay, you know what? You've taken him everywhere you can think of. Nobody knows this. PANDAS doesn't make sense. You've got to figure it out. In the meanwhile, I'm getting sicker. My adopted kids, who are these perfect little angels, start acting horrible. And I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. We're all under a lot of stress. Until one day, my adopted daughter came downstairs, and I'm in research mode. I'm watching House. I'm watching Drop Dead Diva. Anything that has to do with medical or court. Cram. Pulled my textbooks out, Googling day and night. She comes downstairs after she'd been awful for a few days, and she leaned down and she showed me behind her ear, and she said, look at this. And it was a boil. And I was like, what is that? So I thought, is this all contagious? Something that's still actively contagious in our home? So I started thinking along that track, and I was able to get my son in with Dr. Trifoletti because the guardian ad litem had made sure I can't see Dr. Latimer anymore with some kind of weird court order. So, but Dr. Trifoletti ran 35, test tubes, because I just kept thinking, we need data. This doesn't make sense. So all the lab work comes back. So I got the boil on her ear. That's a clue. And now I've got these labs. The only thing's wrong with my son, like I'm looking at him, the way he's acting, and I can see like red around his eye, like up above his sinus. I can see that. And that's about the only thing physical I'm getting. And then his lab work showed an active mycoplasma pneumonia infection and extremely high streptococcal pneumonia titers, like all 23 serotypes, which were like, out the roof. And I was like, I don't think he got that vaccine. And so I thought, you know what? I just need to put this puzzle together myself. And so I went and I ordered his, because with all the court and all the stuff I'd been through, of course, by now he'd been to the psych hospital a couple times. I mean, I was getting it. I was like, I need the full legal medical record. So I call where he was born. I get them out of the vault, all the records. I make it into like this book. So I'm reading it, going through, I'm working with this Dr. Trifoletti. We do more and more testing. We can't find anything. I said, okay, if this is an autoimmune disease, what's causing autoimmune diseases? Because the labs show his immune system's fine. So I learned that I can set up appointments with specialists and I don't have to be referred. So I set up an appointment with ENT, immunology, just to check everything. All those labs and tests come back. He's completely 100% healthy. So I've narrowed it down to like, okay, it's either his genes or it's one of these two things that are in these initial set of labs. In the meantime, Dr. Trifoletti started putting him on antibiotics, a few, this kind, that kind. And it was really uncanny because the antibiotics had way more of an effect on his behavior than any of the psych medications we tried. We tried like 15 or 20 of them by the time. And I was like, okay, we're starting to get somewhere. And so I was reading through all the records and I was just like, this thing that he had as a baby, when he had the pneumonia and the ear infections as a baby, I'm reading through the records very slowly. It never went away. It'd been treated with Zithromax and all these different antibiotics, yet it had never really left. And it came back kind of in different ways. And then it came to where when he was 6 or 7, he stopped getting those fevers, high fevers and symptoms that he had before. And by the 3rd grade, he got ADHD. And it appeared that slowly over his lifetime, this infection he'd had as a baby had just never been killed. Maybe it was resistance. That's what I'm starting to think. But it became a misdirected immune response slowly. It didn't happen overnight. This autoimmunity had developed in him. And so by the time he's this age, he hasn't had a fever in 10 years, and I'm thinking, okay. So whatever he had then, he still has. What is that? Well, come to find out, we did the genetics testing. It came back. He had nothing, no genes for any of the diagnoses, not even one for autoimmune. So I'm like, okay, it's got to be environmental. So I hone in on the mycoplasma pneumonia because there's really, other than the strep, the sinus stuff. So I hone in on the mycoplasma pneumonia and I'm like, okay, it's got to be this. I know it's supposed to be pneumonia. He doesn't have pneumonia, but it's still got to be that. So there's got to be an explanation. I'd worn out all the doctors. I had a lot of labels in all the records and crazy or whatever at the time. So I went and I started calling researchers and I finally got one, studied chlamydia pneumonia. And I said, okay, I need to know more about mycoplasma because there's only one guy in this whole country that studies mycoplasma pneumonia, and that is Garth Nicholson out in California. I was like, great, we'll go there because I'm starting to think if this is contagious and causing all the things, maybe it's causing my symptoms too, because by this time I'm diagnosed with complex regional pain syndrome and I'm on nerve blocks, pain pills, Lyrica. The things are just, becoming more serious.
They're piling, yeah.
They're piling on. And so I find this Dr. Nicholson, I pull up his website and I start to read all of his research and I just I'm shocked. And I mean, I'm shocked because the story that he tells and has the research to back up 70 something studies was that the mycoplasma pneumonia is not the traditional mycoplasma pneumonia, but it's been modified. And it is now pathogenic mycoplasma pneumonia, and it's been genetically modified to be antibiotic resistant, more virulent, more pathogenic, and also there's been like little pieces of viruses woven into the genome of this bacteria. And so that they express at different times. And so like with the roseola, the HHV6, that was in one of the strains. And so I'm like, okay, why would anybody do this? And apparently there was a lot of testing going on down in the Texas prison systems back in the late 80s. And they were testing it on death row inmates, and it somehow got out to the community of Huntsville, Texas, and the citizens were getting ALS, MS, and rheumatoid arthritis at a 5,000% rate higher than the rest of the country. And the more I read, the more I knew that this story was true, unbelievable as it seemed, because my brother-in-law had been down in that system back in 2003, right before he moved in with us when he came to do hair in the salon. And I remember when he moved in, everybody in our house we got deathly sick. At the time, we thought it was the flu, but then we ended up with big boils on us. Now we know it's MRSA. At the time, nobody knew what it was. So I came to know that we had gotten that organism from him. And then I started to put it all together, because once he moved out from us, he would move in with this family member, every single set of family members he'd moved in to. There was suicide, addiction, brain cancer, lung cancer, Alström malformation, rheumatoid arthritis, every kind, 9 kinds of it was just like a path that he'd left. And I thought, as much as I believe this is true, I still don't know if I can believe that this had really happened. So I kept reading, and I found that if owners do have this, then the dogs get it, or the pets can get it. So I recalled then how all of our pets had died in early death the last 10, 15 years. And specifically the dog we had just adopted a year earlier, when he came to live with us, he'd gotten sick with some kind of pneumonia, but no doggy diseases. And so, of course, I went to 5 or 6 doctors, and they wouldn't test us for it, any of us, because we didn't have the symptoms of pneumonia. So I had an idea, and I took the dog to the vet, and I was like, okay, I didn't tell him the story, but I just said, here's the deal. Can you please check the dog for this organism? He agreed, and the test came back positive.
Wow.
And that was probably the happiest day of my life, because then I knew probably what was affecting all of us.
Oh,
the
my
next
gosh.
step was to get the protocol. I know.
Validated.
The next validated. Finally. And so once we have that test, I managed to get a test from an ENT that wasn't in the system, and I was also positive. And I knew he was positive. So I thought, okay, this is the common denominator. Now to get the protocol. Long story short, we ended up having to order the medications that we needed from another country, because you can't get this in that order. We ended up staying on this long-term antibiotic therapy, all of us at the same time, and the dog, until we all finally completely recovered.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that is amazing.
Yeah,
so you're happy. So
like,
tell me what life looks like right now for you.
Well, it was like on the way down, I was like, either I'm going to order $700 worth of Indian antibiotics, or I'm going to make my house payment. So I'll go with A. I gotta live.
Right.
So let the house go down, down, down. So now that he's better and we're all better and we don't have that anymore, I've been able to, come back up. And I recently got engaged this past year.
Oh,
and,
congratulations.
We just bought a home in Brentwood. So yeah, it's been really a miracle to just live this out.
We'll talk about the perspective of literally going through hell with no one around you and having to dig your way out. You certainly did that for yourself and your family and your son, and I'm sure he's so grateful.
Oh, he is so grateful, and he is so sweet, and he's doing great. He's going to college. He thinks he's going to study, neurobiology. He does jujitsu. He's up to his brown belt. He teaches guitar lessons. He works with us on our construction business. So, yeah,
that's
it is just
amazing.
Grateful every day.
Well,
yeah.
I want to remind you that you wrote a book, and if people want to read your book and learn more about you and your story, how can they do that?
You can go to what'swrongwithmychild.com, and you can order the book there directly from Barnes & Noble. We also have a website, what'swrongwellness.com, because there's a lot of families that aren't going to be to the level where they're ready to just order antibiotics from foreign countries. So we have developed a wellness program. We use energy scanning and nutraceuticals, and we've really had just as good as success with that route. And so I'm just anybody that can get your doctor on board or need help, reach out, and I can help send you research, talk to you about how to talk to your doctor. Even sometimes I'll talk to doctors for people as a kind of a medical liaison. And then you just have, if you've exhausted everything and you just can't find anyone to help, reach out and we will do everything within our power to get you the help that you need for your family.
Oh, I love that. Like your team consists of doctors, you've got a lawyer on board. You're finding all the resources for people. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me and letting me share this story.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for listening to the Child Life On Call podcast. I'm your host, Katie Taylor, and you can follow us at Child Life On Call on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please rate and review to make it easier for other families to find us. We have cute merch available at www.bonfire.com/store/childlifeoncall, and you can listen to more episodes and find resources at childlifepodcast.com.